Hello and welcome. We are the Ministry of the Real Truth, and we came across this excerpt from the Grand Bible, 4th Revised Edition 2022, on the Torah, Grand Bible Excerpt P.131, Lord Henfield 2022, and it carries Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International Creative Commons license, so no copyright infringement was intentional. Further down in the description, it has the Torah is the most significant part of Jewish scripture. It is the most sacred Hebrew text, the Jewish book of law or instruction. The name of the Torah's central protagonist, Abram or Abraham, could denote a clan or tribe rather than a person, for abra has the same linguistic origin as abhira, habiru, ophir or Hebrew. After the death of King Shulgi, Sumer was ravaged by invaders. Many civilizations had come to a halt due to the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in around 1995 BC. Abram left Sumer for Harran, Anatolia, shortly after, then for Egypt. It is possible that Abram belonged to the Hyksos, who settled at Avaris. Nearby, the Canal of the Pharaos was built by Pharao Senusret II, Sesostris 12th dynasty, in around 1850 BC. The Torah is the principal scripture of all Hebrews. It refers to key events in the distant past as well as the Hebrew laws, both influenced by Mesopotamia and Egypt. So on that note, these people of Sumer, according to this, were the Chaldeans, Abraham and his people in the city or of Chaldea. So there's a difference between the word Sumer and Sumerians. So they are two different, distinct peoples, because the Greek has the end prefix or suffix ia, which means that geographical location which was possessed by a certain people. So it could have been a completely different people that ended up there in the deserts of Sumer or Shinar and began building the Tower of Babel in Babylonia, which is another, or Babylonia, which is another name for Chaldee or Chaldea. So let's have a look at what this book excerpt has to say. The Torah, the teachings or the books of law, or the Samaritan Bible, or the Pentateuch, or the 5 books of Moses. I'm just going to adjust this so we can see it. And on this page it reads, somewhere at around 1995 BC, the Mount Vesuvius in Italy erupted and caused a massive climate change. For decades, the extreme weather conditions that followed led to drought, famine and civil war. It brought civilizations like the Minoan or the Indus civilizations to the end. Egypt, Canaan and Mesopotamia were at the brink of collapse. The Hyksos have arrived in Egypt during Egypt's 12th dynasty, 1991 to 1802 BC. Today they are identified with Canaanites. They have settled peacefully in Goshen or Gosen, the Avaris area, Lower Egypt. At first they seem to have been welcomed by Egypt because the site was originally founded by Imhat I, or at least with his consent, on an eastern branch of the Nile in the Delta. Soon, however, they have established their own kingdoms, so the 14th dynasty around 1725 to 1650 BC and 15th dynasty 1650 to 1550 BC have been Canaanite dynasties in Lower Egypt, existing alongside the surviving 13th, 16th and 17th Egyptian dynasties between 1803 BC and 1550 BC in Upper Egypt, when the Hyksos / Canaanites tried to conquer Upper Egypt at the end of the 18th dynasty, 1550 to 1290 BC. They provoked the Egyptians to fight for their country, which ended with the total defeat of the Hyksos Canaanites or / Canaanites and the expulsion from Egypt. So these Hyksos / Canaanites could have been the descendants of Abraham coming out of there, and they're ending up being made slaves in Egypt by God through the scriptures, what it says in the scriptures. These events match almost perfectly with events described in the Hebrew Bible when the tribes of Abraham have migrated to Egypt at around 1950 BC, and after the defeat of their successors by the kings Kamose and Amose have been driven out in an event known to us as the Exodus of Moses. According to the Hebrew Bible, an unnamed Pharaoh, most likely Amose, ordered the Israelites to leave Egypt. In Exodus 12:37, 38, 40 and 41 we read, "And the children of Israel journeyed from Ramses, P-Ramses, or Pi-Ramses, that's the actual city, to Sukkot, about 600,000 on foot that were men besides children. And a mixed multitude went up also with them, and flocks and herds, even very much cattle. Now the sojourning of the children of Israel who dwelt in Egypt was 430 years. And it came to pass at the end of the 430 years, even the self-same day it came to pass, that all the hosts of the Lord went out from the land of Egypt." The text was obviously written long after the Exodus. Their starting point was not Ramses, because that city was built by Ramses I. The author meant Avaris, the capital city of the Hyksos, meaning the Canaanites / Israelites in Egypt, which was at the very same location. When the author used the name Ramses several hundred years later, Avaris was already forgotten or shamefully replaced. You see, like a lot of these latter archaeologists, Christian archaeologists, try to match it with the Bible and make it fit, and they created a timeline which was too far forward. So it was discovered by another archaeologist, who forget his name at present, who worked out that they had put the timeline 200 years or more ahead. So he corrected it. So it wasn't the king Ramses. It was a different king, possibly this Amos, because it's supposedly written on the pillars at Luxor or other. It was Dr. Ben Johan went there and was talking to or with a European man or another man, and he explained it to him, and he said, "This is what it says on these pillars, etc., all this hieroglyphs and so forth," that it was King Amos or Kamosi, one of those two, that kicked them out. The name Sukkot was chosen not incidental but on purpose. The Hebrew word Sukkot is the plural of sukkah, meaning hut, both tabernacle or confinement, such as a canal lock. Today Sukkot is known as a festival's name, the festival of ingathering at the year's end, Exodus 34:22. It marks the end of the harvest time and thus of the agricultural year in the land of Israel. People built a kind of hut or shed, which is a walled structure covered with shachak, plant material such as overgrowth or palm leaves. The real religious reason is that of commemorating the Exodus. "You shall dwell in booths 7 days. All that are Israelites born shall dwell in booths, that your generation may know that I made the children of Israel to dwell in booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God." God, Leviticus 23:42-43. What has this festival to do with confinement? The above mentioned name Sukkoth is not without significance. Sukkoth or Sukkot is a place where the Canal of the Pharaohs, built by Pharao Senusret III between 1878 to 1839 BC, had locks, Sukkot, which equals water confinements, canal locks, that could confine and divide the water in order to keep the salty or bitter water from the bitter lakes, separated from the valuable sweet water of the east wind the sweet water of the river Nile, which the canal was heading to. And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. And the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea upon the dry grounds, and the waters were a wall unto them on their right hand and on their left. Exodus 14:21-22. These events took place at about 1530, perhaps 700 or 800 years before they were finally written down. To an attentive reader, this description brings Canal locks into his mind, with walls like high likelihood that the Hebrew Bible tries to tell us about a real and historical event in the past without telling us too much. The expulsion of the Canaanite Hyksos, or the children of Israel, as they called themselves, was ordered by the Pharaoh, most likely right after the Hyksos were defeated in the 18th or 19th year of Amos' reign. That was in around 1530 BC. For 430 years they lived in Egypt, which means since 1960 BC. On his expedition to Egypt, 1842 to 1845, Carl Richard Lepsius found the amazing wall paintings above in the tomb of Numen, a hard name to say there, Hotep, because this K here is silent. So it's not Noom Hotep, it's like Noom Hotep, because the name Ham is often spelled Kham. It's not pronounced as Cam, it's Ham, the same as an Egyptian. So all those people out there calling themselves Kemites are actually wrong. They're Hamites, because it's spelled Kham. So they would be, if they're people, the descendants of Cam, Noah's sons, his descendants, then they would be Hamites, not Kemites or Kemites. Okay, so for 430 years they lived in Egypt, which means since 1960 BC. On his expedition to Egypt, 1842 to 1845, Carl Richard Lepsius found the amazing wall painting in the tomb of Hotep, to a government official who died in around 1950 BC. In Beni Hassan, an ancient Egyptian cemetery near Memphis, it shows a man described in the text on the wall as Abisha the Hyksos, Hikakasut for Hyksos, leading a group of Aramaeans, Canaanites. This is not only one of the earliest known uses of the term Hyksos and the oldest picture that showed Hyksos, but it matches exactly the date of arrival, 430 years before the defeat in 1960 BC. And here is a picture of Egypt seen from a spaceship. That would be a man-made rocket, right? The photographer was looking south when he took the photograph. We clearly can see the Green Nile Delta that has the shape of a triangle. From Nubia, modern Sudan, at the horizon to the left, somewhere around up here, the river Nile winds itself through the Sahara Desert. Or maybe it's here. Like a snake, and approaches the corner of the triangle. This is the location of Cairo and the Giza pyramids. Left of the triangle is the Suez Canal. Visible as a long green string. Kind of confusing here. Maybe that's it here. Maybe it's here. To look at a map to verify that. Left of the triangle is the Suez Canal, visible as a long green string leading from the Mediterranean in front to a dark spot which is called the Bitter Lakes, before the canal resumes its journey to the Gulf of Suez. in the Red Sea. Right at the dark spot we can see another long string coming from the middle of the triangle. This is the Canal of the Pharaos, built in 1850 BC. This ancient Suez Canal is still green like the modern canal because it still contains water which feeds the plants above. It was once the end of a trade route from India leading right into the Egyptian heartland. And here's the Blue Nile in northern Ethiopia. The first Hebrews most likely used the waterway of the river Nile, the Blue Nile, which brought them from their community in Elephantine directly into this green fertile land in northern Ethiopia. Aramaic documents have been found in Elephantine and Aswan, southern Egypt. Most of these documents are marriage contracts, private letters, religious and business documents from a Hebrew community that lived there from about 500 to 400 BC. Later these people disappeared from Elephantine. They might have moved to northern Ethiopia and are now known as Beta Israel, House of Israel or Community of Israel. And here is maps of Abraham's journey, part 1 from Ur to Harran. From here all the way up. Okay. So this is where it all started apparently. Okay. Abraham's journey, part 2 from Harran to Egypt. So he's gone from here all the way down to Aleppo and so forth to Avaris, and then from Succoth to Hebron. It's got some information there on it. The stories of the Bible or other scriptures for that matter are often rejected as pure fantasy. The stories of Abraham contain some amount of historicity. Nevertheless, when Abraham left the Sumerian hometown Ur for Harran, it was actually Chaldean, because it's Ur of Chaldea, not Samaria. But there's probably a little geographical location there called Sumer. He left his Sumerian homeland Ur for Harran on the first part of his journey. He had good reasons for it. Harran, Akkadian Haranu, meaning crossroad, also known as Karhai, was an important strategic centre in a major ancient city in Upper Mesopotamia, whose site is in the modern village of Harran, Turkey, 44 kilometres / 18 miles southeast of Sanliurfa. The settlement that would become Harran began as a typical Halaf culture village established around circa 6200 BC. The archaeological remains in ancient Harran show clearly why Abraham came here. It was one of the largest commercial, cultural and religious centres of the region. The Greeks called the city Hellenopolis, meaning Greek city, because that's what their name was before they were known as the Greeks. They were called the Hellenes or Hellenes. In the early Christian period, the grey lines along the river Tigris represent an alternative route of Abraham and his clan. The Exodus or expulsion from Egypt stuck in the collective memory of the Hebrews for hundreds of years. Ezekiel, around 622 to 570 BC, writes in Ezekiel 13 to 17, "Thus saith the Lord, I will also destroy the idols, and I will cause the images to cease out of Noph, and there shall be no more a prince of the land of Egypt, and I will put a fear in the land of Egypt, and I will make Pathros, Upper Egypt, Thebes, desolate, and will set fire to Zoan, Tanis, and will execute judgments in Nor, Al-Nu, Ornu, and Anu, or no, in short, meaning Heliopolis, and I will pour my fury upon Sin, or Sin, the desert of Sin, or Sin, T-S-I-N, between Elim and Mount Sinai, the strength of Egypt, and I will cut off the multitude of No, or No, and I will set fire in Egypt. Sin shall have great pain, and No, or No, shall be rent asunder, and Noph shall have distresses daily. Noph, or Moth, was the Hebrew name for Memphis, capital of Lower Egypt. Egyptian and Nebu head, the white walls after the reconquest from the Canaanites, mean Nepha, enduring and beautiful. The young men of Aven, Avaris, the former Hebrew capital in Egypt, in Egyptian, Waret, and of Pebeseth, Bubastis, shall fall by the sword, and these cities shall go into captivity. If the habiru, ancient Hebrews, were no Canaanites, as they claimed, they would have no need for such a grudge against it. Okay, is that supposed to say, if the habiru, ancient Hebrews, were not Canaanites, or nor Canaanites, those who come out of Nor and went there? We are thinking, no, it's a mistake here. It should be, were not Canaanites. A typo error. As they claimed, they would have no need for such a grudge against exactly those places the Canaanites once have been expulsed from, would they? Okay, the shows of Jacob goes on about that. The history of the Israelites begins with Jacob. Remember, his name was changed by God to Israel, so he didn't have Israelites until then, until Isaac had descendants and they had descendants. And this is where the Hebrew language was first developed. Okay, way back in Genesis 10, I think it is, when they made a journey from Harran to Canaan. They probably spoke Akkadian. The Hebrew people were known as the Awa. Check it out in the Hebrew. Who made a cross over. Those who crossed over. Those who made a passage. They were called the children of passage. Or Awer. A-W-E-R in the Hebrew. Okay, some more information here. Jacob first appears in the book of Genesis, where he is described as the son of Isaac and Rebekah, and the grandson of Abraham, Sarah and Bethuel, Abraham's Aramaic nephew. According to the Bible, he was the second born of Isaac's children, the elder being Jacob's twin brother Esau. Jacob brought Esau his birthright and his descendants, and with his mother's help deceived his aging father to bless him instead of Esau. Later in the narrative, following a severe drought in his homeland of Canaan, Jacob and his descendants, with the help of his son Joseph, who had become a confidant of the Pharaoh, moved to Egypt, where Jacob died at the age of 147 supposedly. Jacob is said to have had 12 sons by 4 women, his wives Leah and Rachel, and his concubines Bilhah and Zilpah, who were in order of their birth: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, A-S-H-E-R, not the Asher of Mesopotamia, A-S-H-U-R, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph and Benjamin, all of whom became the heads of their own family groups, later known as the 12 tribes of Israel, and it is also known that he had a daughter, Dinah. Okay, more information.